Why was the road so quiet, when war had torn through every street only days before? Her boots struck the cracked asphalt with a rhythm she could feel echoing in her chest. One step, then another, each louder than it should have been, as if the city itself was listening. No squad beside her. No orders shouted into her earpiece. Only the long shadow of a single soldier stretching across the dust, and the weight of silence pressing down from broken rooftops. Captain Elena Rains. Call sign Echo. She had earned that name years ago, because when she spoke on comms her words were few but they stayed. They lingered, like an echo in the heart. Now she lived up to it more literally than she wished. Her footsteps, the only echo in this deserted city. She slowed. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt it. Eyes somewhere in the jagged ruins, someone was there, watching, waiting. The air itself seemed to tighten around her. She breathed through her nose, steady, sharp. The faint sting of smoke and ash clung to the wind. Even days later, the city still smelled burned, as though the fire had burrowed into its bones and refused to leave. A hollow shell of what it had been. Homes cracked open like broken teeth. A child's toy, dust-stained, lying in the gutter. A market sign, half-hanging, creaking against the breeze. War left ghosts, and they weren't just the dead. She adjusted the strap of her pack and shifted her rifle slightly against her chest. Her training told her, keep moving, don't linger. But instinct told her, listen. Her heartbeat had slowed, but the world around her felt louder. A piece of plaster fell somewhere down the street. She froze, waited, counted, nothing. And then she kept walking. This wasn't supposed to be her mission. She wasn't supposed to be here, alone, isolated, a single figure cut off from her unit. The plan had been clean on paper: convoy insertion, tactical sweep, rendezvous at grid coordinates, extraction before nightfall. The plan had burned up hours ago. The convoy hit, vehicles shredded by fire from rooftops. She still remembered the ringing in her ears, the way the ground had slammed up against her body, the taste of iron filling her mouth as smoke rose. She remembered the voices too, shouting, breaking, then cutting into static. Her radio was gone, dead weight now. Her map half burned. Her squad scattered or worse. And still she walked. Because she had coordinates. That was the thing about duty. It didn't wait for convenience. It didn't care about comfort or fear or loneliness. Duty was the one command you could never refuse. Her father had taught her that long before she ever wore a uniform. Every step you take in service, Lena, he had said, someone will write it down, not on paper you'll ever see, but in a book, the book of duty. Every decision you make, someone someday will remember. And they won't ask if you were tired or afraid or alone. They'll only see the step. She hadn't understood then. She was 16, restless, a dreamer, always staring at the sky. Now every word carried weight. She touched the corner of a building with her gloved hand, the brick cool, the edge sharp. The street ahead stretched open, wider, more exposed. Her boots paused at the intersection. Her reflection caught in a shattered window, her face streaked with soot, hair tucked back tight, eyes harder than they used to be. She barely recognized herself anymore. A memory flickered, her mother's kitchen, the clatter of pans, sunlight through lace curtains. For a heartbeat, the smell of ash turned into the smell of bread. Then a gust of wind blew through the street, and she was back in the present. She crouched, scanned the rooftops, rifle low but ready. Every instinct screamed, they're here, somewhere hidden. But no shot came. Only silence. She crossed the street quickly, staying close to walls. One step, two steps, breath steady. Her boots scraped against loose gravel, too loud. She winced, the sound carried. She imagined eyes narrowing behind a scope, a finger hovering over a trigger. But still nothing. Not yet. When she reached the cover of the next wall, she let herself exhale. The city was playing with her, testing her resolve. Her objective was clear: reach the coordinates, secure the package, exfiltrate. She didn't even know what the package was: intel, a survivor, maybe even something that shouldn't exist at all. She only knew one thing: Command had marked it with red priority. That meant no excuses. Her father's words returned to her again. They'll never ask what it cost you, only if you carried it through. She tightened her grip on her rifle. This wasn't just about orders anymore. It was personal. Somewhere in the chaos of that convoy ambush, she had heard a voice she hadn't heard in years. Over the broken radio static, just a single word. Her name. Lena. Her brother. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this front. He had left the service years ago, walked away from the uniform, from the book of duty, from her. But she had heard him, she was sure of it. And that meant this mission wasn't just about coordinates on a page. It was about him. That was the mystery she carried with her. And it was the reason her steps kept moving, one after the other, even when everything else told her to stop. She reached another corner, and this time she froze, not from instinct but from sound. A whistle. High, faint, broken halfway through. Like someone trying to sing but too weak to finish. Her heart clenched. It wasn't birds. Not here, not now. It was human. She pressed her back to the wall, closed her eyes and listened. The whistle came again, shorter this time. Not a tune, a signal. She remembered, years ago in training, how her brother had whistled the same way when they played mock war games in the woods behind their house. A warning. I see you, it used to mean. Now, in the ruins of a burned city, it could mean life or death. Her hand tightened on the rifle. She should retreat. She should stick to her mission. Coordinates first, everything else second. But her heart betrayed her training. Her breath hitched. Her throat burned. Because sometimes duty wasn't just ink on invisible pages. Sometimes it was blood. She turned the corner. The street was empty. Only shadows stretched across cracked pavement. But the whistle came again, closer now. And this time, faintly, she thought she heard her name. Lena. Her chest tightened. Her grip faltered just slightly. The city seemed to lean in closer, holding its breath with her. The sun was lowering, bleeding light across jagged rooftops, painting the ruins in gold and fire. Her footsteps echoed again, slower this time, as she stepped into the open road. Each one written down in the book of duty. Each one leading her deeper into a story she hadn't chosen, but could never turn away from. Who was calling her name in the ruins of a city that should have been empty? Elena froze in the middle of the street. Her rifle up, her breath sharp. The wind stirred dust along the cracked pavement, but nothing moved where the sound had come from. Lena. It was faint, strained. But she knew the shape of that voice the way a soldier knows the shape of their weapon. Her brother. She clenched her jaw so tight it hurt. It wasn't possible. He'd left the service years ago, walked away from the uniform, walked away from her. The last time they'd spoken, they hadn't parted as family, not really. Words had been thrown like blades, blades that never came back. And yet here now, his voice cut through smoke and silence like no time had passed at all. Her instinct screamed trap. Voices didn't just appear in cities like this. The enemy knew psychology. They knew how to bait a lone soldier out of cover. But her heart betrayed her. It wanted to believe. She dropped to one knee, eyes scanning the ruined windows, rifle steady against her shoulder. Her ears worked harder than her eyes. Silence then again. The whistle faint, 3 notes breaking on the last. Exactly the way he used to call her back home, when she got too far ahead in the woods. Her throat went dry. The coordinates in her pack burned against her spine. Orders screamed at her from memory. Secure the package. Do not deviate. But family whispered louder. She slid against the wall of the building, moving low, rifle up, boots quiet against broken stone. Every sense on edge. The city shifted around her, sounds magnified, every shadow alive. A loose shutter slammed against a wall in the breeze. She flinched, swallowed. Kept moving. Another corner, another empty street. And then movement. Not on the rooftops, not in the open. Inside, behind a fractured doorway. The briefest shift of shadow, like someone stumbling. She aimed. Held her breath. Waited for the shot that should have come. None came. Her eyes narrowed. She edged forward, every muscle tight. Inside, the light was dim. Dusk caught the sun like faint mist. The smell of burned wood stronger here. Her boots creaked on charred floorboards as she stepped in. She raised her voice just enough to carry. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a cough, weak, broken, followed by a word that nearly tore her open. "Lena." Her chest caved inward at the sound. Her rifle lowered just slightly. And she saw him. Collapsed against a wall, one arm wrapped tight against his side, his uniform shredded, his face thinner than she remembered, eyes glassy with pain. But it was him. Her brother. David Rains. Her throat closed. For a moment the war outside vanished, and she was 16 again, watching him pack his bag for his first deployment, hearing him promise he'd come back, believing him. Now he looked like a ghost. She rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside him, rifle slipping against the floor. Her hands hovered, afraid to touch him, afraid he might vanish if she did. "David," her voice cracked. Why, what are you doing here?" He smiled, faint, more grimace than joy. "Could ask you the same." Tears stung her eyes, hot, unwanted. She blinked them back hard. She reached for his arm, but he flinched. "Don't, it's bad." Her gaze dropped to his side. Blood soaked through makeshift bandages, too much, too deep. Her training surged to the surface. She ripped open her kit, hands steady now, voice calm though her chest was shaking. "Stay still, I'll fix this, we'll get you out." He caught her wrist, his grip weak but his eyes fierce. "No time." "Don't say that," she snapped, sharper than she meant. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "There's something you need to know." Her heart stopped. The coordinates, the mission, the red priority package. It wasn't coincidence, it was him. "You," she whispered. He shook his head weakly. "Not me, what I have." Her pulse hammered. "What do you mean?" His voice was barely breath. "They think it's just intel, files, but it's more than that, evidence, proof of what they've been doing, what they'll keep doing if," he broke off, shuddering. She pressed her hand harder against his wound, desperate, angry, refusing to let him fade. "If what?" "If we don't stop them." She wanted to scream. At him, at the war, at the silence that kept swallowing answers whole. Outside something shifted, a scrape, a shadow. Her body went rigid. Not alone. David's eyes flicked toward the door. "They followed me," he whispered. "They know I'm here." Her blood went cold. This was the trap her instincts had warned about. And now she was caught in it with him. She shoved a fresh bandage into his side, then pulled her rifle back up, eyes trained on the broken doorway. Shadows danced, too many. She whispered, urgent, low, "How many?" "Two, maybe three, scouts, more close behind." Her mind raced, no comms, no backup. And David too weak to move. Her choices collapsed into two brutal truths. Stay and they'd both die. Run and she'd leave him to the wolves. Her throat tightened. Her father's words pressed down again. Every step you take, Lena, someone will write it down. What kind of step would this be? Her heart thrashed inside her chest. David's hand found hers, trembling but firm. You have to take it, the drive. It's all that matters now. She shook her head violently. No, I'm not leaving you. Listen to me. His voice cut sharper than his body should have allowed. This isn't about me. It never was. You carry it, you finish it. That's the only way any of this means something. Tears blurred her sight. Her rifle shook slightly in her grip. The scrape outside grew louder, boots on gravel. Voices low closing in. David's hand slipped into his vest, fumbling, pulling out a small black drive. His hand shook as he forced it into hers. Book of duty, Lena, write it down. Her hand closed around it, cold, heavy. Her stomach turned to stone. Outside, the enemy's voices grew clearer. Foreign words, laughter. The hunt had ended. She looked at David, his face pale but eyes burning with one last command. Her soul fractured. Every instinct screamed to stay. But the book of duty whispered otherwise. Her breath caught. Her decision would etch itself in ink she could never erase. The doorway darkened. Figures moved in. Her trigger finger tightened. Her body braced. And in that single heartbeat, Elena Raines made her choice. How long does it take to make a decision that changes the course of your life? A second. Maybe less. The figures moved in the doorway, shadows bending, rifles raised. Elena didn't wait for orders. She was the order now. Her rifle cracked once, twice. The echoes slammed through the hollow building, deafening in the confined space. One figure dropped immediately. The other stumbled back, dragging himself behind cover. David flinched at the sound, his body jerking against the wall. Go, he rasped. She ignored him, swinging her aim toward the shattered window. Movement flickered there, a third scout climbing through. She fired. Glass exploded, dust raining down, the body slumping half in, half out of the frame. Silence. Then shouts. Distant but growing. Her stomach sank. More were coming. She turned to David, breath ragged. We can still move. I'll carry you. He gave a broken laugh, shaking his head. You can't carry me and the mission. Her throat tightened. You're my brother, I'm not leaving you. His hand, trembling, blood-slick, grabbed her collar, pulled her close until she felt his breath on her cheek. You already left me once, Lena. Don't do it again. The words gutted her. Because he was right. When he'd walked away from the military, from their father's legacy she hadn't followed, she stayed. She'd chosen the uniform over him, chosen the book of duty instead of blood. And now here they were, two siblings in the ruins of a city, caught between past choices and the present's brutal demand. His hand slipped from her collar, his chest heaved with effort. You know what you have to do. Outside, boots pounded against broken pavement. Voices barked orders, growing sharper, closer. Her pulse thundered. She scanned the room, one door, one window, too many ways for enemies to pour in. No time, no options. Unless. Her eyes fell to David's pack beside him. Explosives. Not much, but enough to make a wall collapse, enough to make a stand. Her chest burned. She didn't want to think it, didn't want to voice it. But David saw her eyes flick, and he understood. He gave a faint, grim smile. Yeah, that's the way. Her voice broke. Don't. Lena, his tone steadied even as his body shook. I'm not walking out of here, you know it, I know it, but you can. Tears blurred her vision. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood. Dad used to say, her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. He used to say history doesn't care if you're tired or afraid, only if you carried it through, but he never told us how much it hurts. David's gaze softened just for a breath. Hurts means it matters. The pounding boots closed in. Shadows stretched across the doorframe. David pressed the drive harder into her hand. "Take it, run, finish it for me." Her lungs refused to work. Her whole body screamed against what her mind already knew she had to do. "David, go!" The door splintered, voices shouted, a rifle barrel shoved through. Elena moved. She grabbed her brother's pack, ripped free the detonator, and shoved it into his shaking hand. Their eyes locked, one last time, one last childhood, one last shared silence. Then she turned. Rifle up, boots pounding, through the back hallway out the shattered window. Behind her the sound followed. First the guttural shouts of enemies rushing in. Then David's voice, one last roar, ragged but defiant. "For Lena." And then the building erupted. The explosion tore through the street, bricks and flame collapsing in a thunderous wave. The shockwave shoved Elena forward, slamming her against the ground. Ears ringing, dust choking her lungs, she scrambled to her knees, gasping, eyes wide. The building was gone. Her brother with it. Her chest caved. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Only a ragged breath, broken, burning. She pressed her forehead to the dirt, tears carving tracks through the grime on her face. And then silence. The kind that doesn't comfort but condemns. Every step written in the book of duty. And this step she would carry forever. She forced herself up, staggering on weak legs. The drive felt like iron in her hand, heavy, accusing, sacred. She shoved it into her vest, wiped blood from her face. The mission wasn't his anymore, it was hers. She stumbled forward through the smoke, eyes scanning, body trembling, but something colder now settled inside her. Not just grief. Resolve. The enemy would think they'd cornered prey. But prey didn't walk forward with this kind of silence. Prey didn't carry the weight of both family and duty. Her father's words whispered in her memory, the book never forgets. She adjusted her grip on the rifle. Her jaw clenched. Her footsteps echoed again, through dust, through ruin, through the road that seemed endless. The city wasn't done with her. But neither was she done with it. She walked on. Hours later, night fell. The city grew colder. Every building loomed with hollow eyes. Every alley hummed with possible danger. She found cover in the husk of a collapsed store, crouching low, rifle across her knees. She hadn't stopped since the explosion. She couldn't stop. If she did, the image of David, his eyes, his voice, his last smile, would drown her. But here in the shadows, the silence pressed too hard to resist. Her breath shook, her fingers trembled. She pulled the drive from her vest, turned it over in her hand. Tiny, ordinary, yet heavy enough to change everything. Her mind whispered questions. What proof did it hold? What truth had David died for? What story was now hers to finish? And the worst question of all, would she have the strength to carry it through? Her throat tightened. She whispered into the darkness, voice breaking. "I won't fail you." The words hung in the air, fragile, barely believable. But she had to believe them. Because the alternative was admitting his sacrifice was nothing, and that she could not bear. She pressed her back against the cold wall, clutching the drive, listening to the distant rumble of enemy vehicles. They were sweeping the city, hunting. She closed her eyes for a moment, her body aching, her soul bleeding. And when she opened them again, the night looked different. Clearer, sharper. Because her duty was no longer just an order. It was a promise. Why did the night always feel louder than the day? Elena crouched in the husk of the collapsed store, breath slow, every sound sharpened to a blade. The city had gone black, its power long gone, but moonlight carved pale silver across the ruins. In the dark, the smallest things betrayed you, a cough, a scrape, the crunch of boots on glass. And she could hear them. Not close, not yet, but moving, vehicles growling down avenues, distant shouts in a language she knew too well by now, flashlights sweeping through broken windows like predators' eyes. The hunt was on. Her body begged for rest. Her arms ached from hours gripping her rifle. Her knees trembled from endless movement. But the real fatigue sat deeper in her chest, in her heart, where grief throbbed like an open wound. David's face kept flashing in her mind. Not the broken, bloodied one she had left in that building. The other one, young, laughing, tossing her a ball in their backyard, telling her she always ran too far ahead in the woods, whistling that same three-note call when it was time to come home. Now his voice was gone, and all she had left was the drive he had pressed into her hand, like it was the weight of the world itself. Her fingers brushed against it in her vest pocket almost unconsciously, small, plastic, yet she swore it pulsed with heat, with responsibility. What did it hold? What proof had been worth her brother's life? And was she strong enough to carry it further? She didn't know, but she had no choice. She exhaled, a sharp cloud in the cool night air, then shifted against the rubble. She couldn't stay here. The sweep would close in within minutes. Her eyes scanned the alley beyond. Moonlight caught shattered glass. A fire escape hung twisted from the side of a building like a broken limb. Shadows rippled where the wind pushed old sheets of metal against walls. She slid forward, slow, careful, every movement rehearsed by years of training, yet tonight it felt heavier, harder. Training didn't prepare you for the kind of ache that slowed your soul. Boots hit the ground, crunch. She froze. A flashlight beam cut through the alley, sweeping across rubble, stopping just short of her hiding place. Voices murmured, 2 men, maybe 3. Her finger hovered over the trigger. One squeeze and she'd paint the alley red, but the sound would bring a dozen more. Her heartbeat thudded. Slow, steady. Wait. The beam lingered, then drifted away. The voices receded. She let out the breath she had been holding. Another step in the book of duty. She rose slow, rifle at the ready, and slipped into the alley once it was clear. Every sense stretched, nerves flaring at the smallest sound. Her path wound deeper into the city. The streets felt endless, each corner another test of her resolve. Sometimes she heard nothing but her own footsteps. Sometimes the night roared with distant gunfire. Hours bled together. She crossed a courtyard where weeds had already begun clawing through cracked stone. She passed under an archway where bullet holes mapped out a story no one would ever read. She stepped over a child's bicycle, bent and rusted, left in the middle of the road like its rider had simply vanished mid-pedal. Every detail cut into her. Because this wasn't just a battlefield, it had been a life, a city that once breathed, laughed, loved, and now it was nothing but ash. And yet, duty demanded she walk through it. She stopped near a collapsed fountain, crouched behind its stone rim, and pulled the drive from her vest. The moonlight glinted on its surface. She turned it over, tracing its edges with her thumb. What secrets lived inside it? Her brother had died for this. Would she even understand its worth when she finally delivered it? The thought gnawed at her. She hated not knowing. Hated carrying something that felt more like a question than an answer. She slid it back into her vest and whispered to the night, "Whatever you are, you'd better be worth him." Her voice broke halfway through. She closed her eyes, drew a breath, forced herself calm. Movement jolted her eyes open. Not enemy. Not patrol. A figure small, darting across the square. She tensed, rifle raised, eyes narrowing. Too small to be a soldier. Too fast to be a wanderer. She followed with her sightline, breath shallow. The figure stopped in the shadow of a doorway, turned. A child. Elena's heart jolted. A girl no older than 10. Clothes tattered, face smudged with dirt, eyes wide and hollow. She held something in her arms, a bundle wrapped in cloth. The girl froze as she spotted Elena. Two statues in the moonlight, neither moving, both afraid. Elena's rifle trembled in her hands. Slowly, painfully, she lowered it. The girl didn't run, didn't cry, she just stared. And Elena stared back, her throat tightening. In the girl's eyes, she saw something she hadn't let herself feel since the convoy was hit. Hope fragile, unbelievable, but there. The girl clutched her bundle tighter, then slipped into the building's shadow and vanished. Elena exhaled hard, lowering her gaze. This city wasn't as empty as they said. And that meant her brother hadn't just died for intel. He died in a place where life still clung, however fragile. The thought twisted her chest. Duty wasn't abstract anymore. It had faces, it had eyes. She rose, moving again, steps heavier with the weight of what she'd just seen. As she crossed another block, the radio on her belt crackled faintly, static, broken, but real. Her heart lurched. She grabbed it, twisting the dial, whispering into the mic. "This is Echo. Repeat, this is Echo. Does anyone copy?" More static. Then a voice, faint, fractured. "Copy, Echo, hold position, extraction." Her body trembled. After hours of silence, hours of isolation, the sound of another voice nearly shattered her. But the signal broke, collapsing back into static. She clenched the radio tight, eyes scanning the rooftops. Extraction. The word burned in her mind. It meant hope. It meant escape. It meant her brother's sacrifice might actually carry through. But it also meant time was running short. The enemy was closing in. She could hear them, distant engines drawing nearer, their sweep tightening like a noose. Her choices narrowed again. Find extraction, secure the package, survive. And now, perhaps, protect more than just herself. Because somewhere in these ruins, a child carried something in her arms. And if Elena's eyes weren't lying, it wasn't just cloth. It was a baby. Her chest tightened. Her breath caught. The drive in her vest suddenly didn't feel like the only weight she carried. She walked faster, boots striking stone, shadows flickering across her face. The city seemed to breathe around her, alive with danger and fragile traces of humanity. Duty had brought her here. But what came next? That would be written not just in the book of duty, but in blood. The city never slept, at least not in ways that brought peace. Engines growled in the distance. Boots struck pavement. Somewhere to the east, gunfire cracked like a storm splitting the horizon. Yet between those bursts of violence, silence pressed down, suffocating and heavy, broken only by the whisper of Elena's own breathing. She crouched on the rooftop of a half-collapsed office block, scanning the maze of streets below. The extraction signal replayed in her mind, ghost-like, hold position, extraction. It had sounded close, closer than anything in days. But her eyes weren't on the rooftops where flares might rise, or on the intersections where armored vehicles prowled. Her eyes kept drifting back to the block where she had seen the girl. That thin figure. Those hollow, unblinking eyes. The bundle clutched to her chest. A child holding a child. Elena squeezed her eyes shut and swore under her breath. Orders were clear. Deliver the drive, secure the intel, survive. That was the book. That was the duty her brother had died for. But orders had never written about moments like this. What good was a book of duty if the pages left no room for mercy? Her fingers brushed against the drive in her vest pocket. Even through fabric, its edges pressed into her skin like teeth. Proof of something. Evidence of the Empire's crimes, maybe even a weapon against them. The kind of thing strategists would whisper over in secure rooms while drinking coffee a world away. But what did it matter if in this city, the same city where her brother's body still lay cooling, children were carrying infants through rubble, hiding from men with guns and floodlights? She opened her eyes. The moonlight pooled across broken glass. In its pale reflection, her own face stared back at her, dirt-streaked, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. A soldier, a survivor, a sister. And maybe, if she allowed herself, a guardian. The decision hurt before she even made it. But she knew. "Damn it," she whispered. Then she stood, slung her rifle, and began to move. The streets swallowed her again. Her boots traced the girl's path, past the dead fountain, through the shadows of leaning buildings, across courtyards that stank of rust and ash. She followed faint signs, the scuff of a shoe in dust, a sheet of fabric snagged on a nail, the faintest echo of hurried footsteps she swore she could still hear in her mind. Every sound behind her threatened pursuit. Every shadow might be a soldier waiting to spring, but she kept moving. And then she found it. The doorway where the girl had vanished. A once grand apartment building, its face fractured by shells, its insides gutted by fire. She slipped inside, rifle raised. The smell hit her first: mold, ash, the faint copper of old blood. Light spilled in weak beams through holes in the ceiling, dust swirling like falling snow. "Hello," she whispered, voice barely audible. No answer. She moved deeper. Her boots pressed glass into powder. Her shadow shifted across peeling wallpaper. Every step threatened to betray her, yet silence stretched on. Then movement. From a stairwell at the far end of the hall, a flicker of fabric, small, darting. Elena's pulse leapt. She lowered her rifle, raised a hand. "Wait," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." For a heartbeat, silence. Then a soft cry, a baby's wail muffled by cloth. The sound pierced her chest harder than any bullet. The girl appeared again at the edge of the stairwell, clutching the bundle. Her eyes were wider now, shining in the dark. She didn't run this time. She just stood there, trembling. Elena lowered herself to one knee, setting her rifle gently on the floor. She raised her empty hands. "I'm like you," she whispered. "I'm just trying to survive." The girl clutched the baby tighter, saying nothing. "What's your name?" Elena tried. No answer. The baby squirmed, let out another faint cry. The girl hushed it, rocking gently, though her own arms shook. Elena felt her throat close. This was no refugee. This was a child forced into motherhood by war, carrying something she didn't even have the strength to hold. She inched forward, slow. "I'm not your enemy. If you stay here, the soldiers will find you. They're sweeping. You know that, don't you?" The girl's lips parted, a whisper broken and small. "They already came." Elena froze. "They took everyone," the girl continued, voice shaking. "Mama, Papa, my brother." She pressed her cheek to the bundle. "Only him left." Her words were shards. Elena could feel each one cutting. The girl looked up then, eyes wet, voice breaking on a question Elena had no right to answer. "Where do we go now?" Elena's hands trembled. For the first time in her career, she had no order, no protocol, no briefing that covered this. "Where do we go now?" She could almost hear David answering in her head, not with strategy, not with commands, just with that old whistle calling her home. She exhaled slow, then she extended her hand. "With me." The girl didn't move. Elena kept her hand out, steady, patient. At last the girl stepped forward. Small fingers brushed against hers. And just like that, the book of duty rewrote itself. They moved together through the ruins. Elena in front, rifle ready, eyes scanning every corner. The girl followed close, clutching the baby, her breathing sharp and fast. Every few blocks, Elena stopped, listening for pursuit. She could hear the sweep tightening, engines crawling closer, orders shouted in the distance. The noose was drawing in. She had one path left: extraction. And now extraction wasn't just about her or the drive. It was about the child, about the baby, about proving her brother hadn't died for a world already lost. They reached an abandoned subway entrance, its gates twisted, its stairs leading into shadow. Elena guided them down, boots echoing in the hollow tunnels. The air was damp, stale, carrying the smell of rust and rot. She stopped at a junction, listening. The baby whimpered. Elena pulled a small canteen from her belt, offered it. The girl hesitated, then took it, tilting water carefully to the baby's lips. Watching them, Elena felt something dangerous stir inside her. Not weakness, not distraction, something heavier. Purpose. The kind she hadn't felt since before the war burned everything she knew. They didn't make it far. Boots echoed above. Voices barked orders. Then floodlights cut through the subway entrance. Elena swore under her breath, pulling the girl into cover. The sweep had found them. Engines rumbled above, doors slammed, Boots poured down the stairs. Dozens, maybe more. She gritted her teeth, raised her rifle, and whispered to the girl, "No matter what happens, don't let go of him." The girl nodded, trembling. Elena's finger curled on the trigger. Her brother's voice echoed in her mind, and the weight of two futures pressed against her chest. The drive. The children. Duty and mercy, colliding in one final heartbeat. The night exploded with footsteps, shouts, and the rising roar of war crashing down on them again. And Elena knew. The next choice she made would decide whether her brother's sacrifice lived forever or died here with her in the dark. Why was the silence worse than the gunfire? Elena crouched low against the crumbling subway wall, rifle steady, breath shallow. The girl huddled behind her, clutching the baby to her chest so tightly the child barely stirred. Only the faintest whimper broke through the dark. Above them, boots thundered. Voices barked commands in a language that had no room for mercy. The sweep was here, organized, relentless, and getting closer with every second. Elena's eyes adjusted to the dim light. Rusted rails ran off into blackness. Broken glass glittered faintly, like stars scattered on the floor. The tunnel stretched forward, a vein leading deeper into the city's buried heart. Her mind split in two. One half screamed, "Run, get them out, keep moving." The other whispered, "The drive, don't forget why you're here." Duty and mercy, two weights pressing against her chest, threatening to crush her lungs. She glanced back. The girl's face was pale, streaked with grime, eyes wide but determined. Elena had seen battle-hardened men crumble under less. Yet this child, carrying another life in her arms, didn't scream, didn't panic. She just looked at Elena, waiting. Waiting for her to choose. Elena swallowed hard. She whispered, "Stay behind me, don't make a sound." The girl nodded. And then the hunt began. Flashlights swept into the tunnel. The beams cut through dust and shadow, slicing the dark into fragments. Boots scraped against concrete. The voices grew louder, measured, methodical, a net tightening with each step. Elena's heart drummed in her ears. She pressed her cheek against the rifle's stock, eyes fixed on the shifting light. One soldier broke ahead of the group, his beam darting over the walls. His boots crunched on gravel. He was young, barely more than a boy. She could see it in his hesitant movements, the way his hand shook slightly as he gripped his weapon. Her finger found the trigger. One shot and the sweep would unravel. Chaos might buy them time. But chaos would also bring the rest of them crashing down. Her breath stilled. The boy passed within 10 feet, his light briefly grazing her boots before swinging away. He didn't see her. Didn't hear the girl's tiny gasp muffled by trembling hands. Elena held her fire, let him pass. But her reprieve lasted seconds. Another soldier shouted something, sharp and commanding. The boy froze, turned. His flashlight steadied, beam crawling back toward her hiding spot. Elena's pulse surged. She rose, fast and silent, pulling the girl with her. They darted deeper into the tunnel, boots barely skimming the ground. A shout erupted behind them. Light spilled. The chase was on. They ran. The tunnel twisted, walls sweating with damp, the air tightening around them. Elena's breath came sharp but controlled. She guided the girl with one hand, rifle clutched in the other. The baby whimpered, the sound cutting through the dark like a flare. Bullets snapped against concrete, sparks spit from metal rails, dust rained from the ceiling. "Keep down," Elena hissed. She shoved the girl behind an overturned maintenance cart, then swung her rifle and fired. The crack echoed like thunder. A soldier dropped. Shouts rose louder, angrier. Elena fired again, missed, fired again. Another body fell. But for everyone that dropped, 3 more surged forward. The tunnel roared with pursuit. They ducked into a service corridor, narrower, darker, the stench of mildew thick in the air. Pipes ran overhead, dripping steadily. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but Elena caught her arm and pulled her forward. "Almost there," Elena whispered. She didn't know if it was true. She just needed the girl to believe it. They burst into a wider chamber, a maintenance hub long abandoned. Rusted tools littered the ground. A ladder stretched upward into blackness, leading to a grate above. Elena scanned it fast. The ladder might be their only chance. She turned to the girl. "Climb now." The girl shook her head, terrified. "I." "Climb," Elena barked, sharper than she meant. The girl obeyed, clutching the baby with one arm, dragging herself up rung by rung. The metal groaned under her weight. Elena turned back just as the first soldier entered the chamber. She fired. The man crumpled, body slamming against the wall. Another followed, and another. Gunfire exploded in the small space, deafening. Elena ducked behind a rusted cabinet, returning fire in sharp bursts. Bullets screamed past her ears, ricocheted off steel, showered sparks. The girl climbed higher, the baby's faint cry drowned by the chaos. Elena gritted her teeth. She couldn't let them through, not here, not now. Her magazine clicked empty. She swore, slamming another in, hands moving on instinct. But she was losing ground. Too many, too close. Her eyes darted upward. The girl had reached the top, fumbling with the grate. It stuck, rust locking it shut. She pushed, kicked, nothing. Elena rose, rifle snapping up. She fired at the ceiling hinge. Sparks burst. Metal screamed. The grate flew open, clattering aside. "Go," she shouted. The girl pulled herself through, dragging the baby after her. She vanished into the night above. Elena exhaled in relief, but it was brief. The soldiers surged, their boots pounding closer. She couldn't follow, not yet. If she climbed, they'd shoot her down before she reached halfway. So she chose. She turned, slammed her shoulder against the cabinet and pushed it down. The heavy steel crashed across the tunnel entrance, sparks flying. It bought seconds, no more. Seconds were enough. She grabbed the ladder, hauling herself up. Her boots slipped on rust, hands raw on cold metal. Below, the soldiers roared, dragging the cabinet aside. A shot grazed her calf. Pain flared hot and sharp. She hissed, pulling herself higher. Her hands reached the edge. She heaved up, rolling onto the surface. The girl was there, kneeling, baby in arms, eyes wide with terror and relief. Elena rose, blood running down her leg, chest heaving. She pulled the girl back from the opening just as bullets ripped through the grate below, sparks spraying into the night. They were out, but not safe. The city stretched around them. Rooftops jagged against a starless sky, smoke still rising from distant fires. The air reeked of exhaust and char. Elena staggered, forcing herself upright. She scanned the skyline, searching. And then she saw it. A flare green burning against the dark, far off but clear, extraction. Relief surged, almost buckling her knees, but she steadied. She looked at the girl. "That's where we're going." The girl nodded, clutching the baby tighter. Elena pressed a hand to her leg wound, sticky with blood. Pain throbbed, but she forced it down. Pain was a companion she knew too well. She turned her eyes to the flare, to the promise it held. But deep inside, another voice whispered. This wasn't over, not yet. The drive still burned in her pocket, soldiers still hunted them, and the book of duty, it wasn't finished writing her steps. She squared her shoulders, gripped her rifle, and led them into the night. And for the first time since her brother's death, she didn't walk alone. Why did the flare feel both like salvation and a trap? Elena kept her eyes on it as she led the girl across rooftops slick with ash. The green glow burned against the ruined skyline, steady, unmoving, promising rescue. Yet with every step closer, doubt gnawed. Extraction was never that simple. Not in this city. Not in this war. Her leg throbbed, blood soaking through torn fabric. Each step was agony, but she pushed forward. The girl followed close, cradling the baby, silent except for her ragged breathing. The silence between them felt heavier than words. Finally, Elena spoke. "What's his name?" The girl blinked, startled. "Who?" "The baby." The girl looked down at the bundle. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For a long moment only the night answered. Then softly, "Jonas." The name cut through Elena like a memory. Her brother's voice, laughing across a childhood yard. The whistle he used to call her home. She clenched her jaw, blinked back the sting in her eyes. "Jonas," she repeated steady. "We'll get him out." The girl nodded, but her face betrayed doubt. They descended from the rooftops into a street choked with debris. Burned-out cars lined the sidewalks, their frames twisted like skeletons. Glass crunched underfoot. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and smoke. Every corner threatened ambush. Elena's rifle swept left to right, never lowering. They passed a mural painted on a cracked wall, faces of children, bright with colors now smeared by soot. The girl slowed, staring. Her free hand brushed the painted cheek of one child, almost as if searching for her own face in the fading lines. Elena paused, watching. War erased so much, and yet sometimes the smallest things, paint on a wall, a whispered name, carried more truth than all the orders shouted in boardrooms. "Keep moving," Elena whispered, gentle this time. The girl nodded, and they pressed on. The closer they came to the flare, the louder the city grew. Helicopters thudded somewhere in the distance. Sporadic gunfire crackled like static, and under it all, the low rumble of armored vehicles rolling through streets. Elena's instincts prickled. This wasn't just pursuit, this was convergence. Extraction, the sweep, both pulling to the same point. Her grip on the rifle tightened. They ducked into an alley to catch their breath. Elena leaned against a wall, pressing a hand to her bleeding leg. The wound burned hotter now, infection whispering its threat. She ignored it, couldn't afford the weakness. The girl crouched opposite, rocking Jonas gently. In the faint light, her face looked older than her years, carved by something no child should bear. Elena studied her, then spoke low. "You don't trust me." The girl met her gaze. "Why should I?" The words were sharp but not cruel, honest. Elena nodded slowly. "Fair." "You'll leave us," the girl whispered, "like everyone else." The ache in Elena's chest deepened. "I won't." "You don't know that." Elena looked away, staring at the broken skyline. She didn't answer, because the girl was right, she didn't know. All she had was choice, and choice was fragile, fleeting, one heartbeat away from being stolen by bullets. They reached the edge of the extraction zone. A plaza stretched ahead, wide and open, littered with rubble. At its center the flare still burned, hissing smoke into the night. Elena froze. Too open, too exposed. Her instincts screamed. She scanned the rooftops, the shattered windows, the dark corners. Shapes shifted. Shadows moved. Soldiers waiting, circling, patient predators. It wasn't just an extraction, it was a trap. Her pulse hammered. She pulled the girl back into cover. "They're here," Elena whispered. The girl's eyes widened. "What do we do?" Elena's breath slowed. Choices spiraled. The drive in her pocket pressed like lead. The girl's fear pierced her chest. The baby whimpered softly, fragile in the night. Duty, mercy, sacrifice. The book of duty had never prepared her for this page. A voice echoed across the plaza, amplified by a speaker, cold, confident. Captain Rains. Elena stiffened. We know you have the drive. Bring it to the flare, step into the light. The voice paused, then twisted cruel. You're not alone, we saw the girl, bring her too. The girl's breath caught. She clutched Jonah's tighter, shaking her head. Elena's mind raced. They knew. They had eyes everywhere. Extraction wasn't coming, not unless she rewrote the story herself. The voice continued, mocking now. Think carefully, Captain. A soldier's duty is obedience. Do your duty and maybe the child lives. Elena closed her eyes. Her father's words echoed. Every step you take in uniform, someone will write it down. And her brother's whistle, faint in memory, urging her forward. She opened her eyes, steel replacing doubt. No, she whispered. Gunfire erupted. Elena shoved the girl behind cover as bullets tore into the plaza. Sparks burst. Dust clouded the air. She fired back, sharp and precise, dropping shadows from rooftops. Her wound screamed, but adrenaline carried her. The girl cowered, shielding Jonah's. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but she didn't scream. Elena fought with the cold clarity of someone who had nothing left to lose, but everything to protect. One shot, another, a soldier fell. But more advanced. She was running out of time, out of ammo, out of blood. And yet in that chaos, she felt a strange calm. Maybe this was the page history had waited to write. She pulled the drive from her pocket, stared at it. The weight of countless lives pressed against her palm. Then she looked at the girl, at Jonah's. Her decision crystallized. The drive wasn't the future. They were. She dropped the drive into the girl's trembling hands. Take him, Elena whispered. Take this, run. The girl's eyes widened. What no? Run, Elena barked, louder than the bullets. The girl froze, torn between terror and faith. Then she clutched the baby and the drive, tears cutting through dirt, and sprinted into the shadows. Elena turned back to the fight. Her rifle barked, her body bled, her soul steadied. Every step, every choice, every sacrifice, it all echoed here, on this road, in this book. And though she knew she might not walk away, she also knew one truth. Sometimes duty wasn't about obedience. It was about what you chose to protect when no one else would. The plaza roared with gunfire. The night blazed with muzzle flashes. And Elena Rain stood in the storm, a shadow etched into history, every step written in the book of duty. But somewhere in the dark, a girl ran with a baby in her arms, and a drive that might change the world. And that was enough. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire? The outpost lay in ruins behind her, smoke curling upward like questions no one would ever answer. The mission was finished. The codes delivered. The men alive, though scarred. She should have felt relief. She should have collapsed with exhaustion. But Elena kept walking. Her boots crunched against gravel, each step echoing on the empty road, as if the earth itself remembered the weight she carried. Every stride belonged not to her alone, but to the names written in the margins of her memory. Carter, Malik, Torres, her father, her mother, her brother who never came home. The road stretched endless, horizon bleeding into pale morning. Dawn painted the sky, but it wasn't a triumphant light. It was fragile, hesitant, like the world wasn't sure it deserved a new day. A convoy rolled past, armored, loud, alive. Soldiers leaned out, cheering, calling her name. Someone reached to pull her aboard. She didn't stop walking. She only raised a hand in acknowledgement, a ghost of a smile breaking her cracked lips. Because this wasn't about celebration. It was about carrying silence where noise used to be. Malik limped beside her, catching up despite his bandaged leg. You don't have to walk, Captain, he said softly. The truck waiting. She looked at him, then at the road ahead. Her voice barely above a whisper, "I do." He nodded, no argument, just understanding. He fell back, letting her footsteps speak for themselves. With every mile, her mind drifted back. To her father's words, to her brother's last letter, to the young recruits who had laughed too loud the night before their first patrol, to the mother who had asked her once long ago, "Why must you always choose the hardest path, Lena?" She had no answer then. She barely had one now. But she knew this: some paths weren't chosen. They were inherited, passed down through duty, through sacrifice, through the quiet insistence that someone had to keep walking when others could not. Her body ached, her shoulders screamed, but she did not falter. The road was empty, yet in her ears she heard them walking with her. The fallen, the broken, the silent, every step echoing not just in her boots but in the invisible pages of that book of duty. A book she would never read. A book written not with ink but with lives lived and lost. At the crest of a hill she stopped. The wind pressed against her face, carrying dust and faint voices. Below lay the base camp, tents, medics, stretchers, antennas reaching for a sky that never answered fast enough. The place of endings and beginnings. Her chest tightened, not from fear, not from pain, but from the unshakable truth that when she stepped into that camp, she would not be the same Elena Rains who left it days ago. She stood there, letting the moment settle. The sun broke over the horizon, spilling light across the cracked road behind her, turning her shadow long, almost endless. She whispered, not for anyone to hear, not even for herself. "For every step, thank you." Then she walked down into camp. No fanfare, no applause, no speeches. Just a soldier, a daughter, a sister, her footsteps echoing one last time on the road that carried her farther than she ever thought she could go. And as the screen of memory faded into silence, one truth remained, sharp as a blade, soft as breath. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply walks,